Today I just want to talk a little bit about ego. And this video is going to be a little basic. Uh and just to remind you, basic doesn't mean inferior um to anything. Basic is just the seed of the plant or the tree, right? So you need that foundation for anything to grow. A basic video on the ego versus the true self. I've used the word ego a lot um, in conversations and spiritual conversations with people, and it's one of those words that it offends people when you say, hey, like that's your ego, that's there. The reason why that didn't work out, the reason why that didn't flow is because your ego. And I notice I always do certain movements. But your ego, it can be very constricting. Your ego is not necessarily a bad thing. But, when people hear like ego, like if I say, oh yeah, man, that was my ego, I just got too much ego today, or I'm a little imbalanced, my ego just took over on that one. And then people will be like, oh no, no, it's, and it's like, no, it's fine. Like, it's just recognizing the difference between you using your ego as opposed to your ego driving you or using you. So let's go back and just kind of define ego and as opposed to your true self. So your ego is that voice that's like, we got to get this done, we got to plan this out, we got to make this list. We have to, your ego tends to compare. Your ego is involved with results. Your ego remembers the past, right? Your ego is projecting into the future. So your ego is surviving, right? Your ego is that get things done voice. Your ego is comparing you to other people. Man, they're doing all that. Look, I'm over here. I'm not even close to that. I gotta get it together, So your ego is that driving force to do things and to produce and to make decisions and to get it together. So that's your ego. Your ego is that survivor. So a lot of times when you say ego, the reason why people get offended is because it's like they think of the word egotistical, which is the ego. You become egotistical when your ego drives you instead of your true self. Instead of living from your true self, your oneness, your divine self, you're living from the external. And that's when you become egotistical. That's when your ego starts to drive. So when you start comparing yourself to other people, when you start acting not from within, but from the external, competition is about ego, right? And it's not that competition is bad, but again, we want to understand the intention. So when your ego is driving, you're trying to prove something, right? When your ego is controlling you, that means that you're doing things based on everything outside of you, right? So I got to do this to prove to them that this. I got to say this to prove that this, right? And then it goes back to that root. I am not enough. So I have to prove this. And when your ego is driving, you start to have that dialogue inside saying, you're not enough unless you do this. You have to prove something here. Because you're not enough. Your divine self, that's not enough. You're not enough just being you. You have to do something in order to be. That's when we experience this imbalance. a lot of these New Age teachings, um, they tend to start at a place where you already kind of understand spirit and the difference between ego and the true self. So it's very rare that we get to talk about just those foundational ideas and what they mean for us. And the idea of the ego is just what I said. It's survival. It's external. It's I have to manipulate resources. I have to get enough of this. I have to get rid of this. You know, it's the day-to-day thing that we go through when we wake up. Boom, I got this to do. And there's nothing wrong with ego in the sense that it helps you to remember. So a lot of times we look back in the past in hindsight and then we remember things, and then it's not until we grow to a certain level that those memories actually help us to learn things that we couldn't learn in that moment because we didn't understand what was happening. So, for example, your ego can really help you when you think about your childhood. You know, as a child, things just happen to us and we process them. We process a lot of things like, oh man, you know, mom's upset, dad's upset, they're fighting, this is going on, so it must be my fault, right? So at that time, we don't know how to look at our parents as people and understand, whoa, they're going through a lot, right? We can't do that. At that age, at 4 and 5, in those young ages, we just kind of look at everything around us and we were kind of just like, what did I do? It's my fault, right? And then you start to do things and say things to prove that you're worthy and that you're enough, and so it's not until we get into our adult years and we look back and we think, man, you know, they did the best they could with what they had. Man, their childhoods were rough. You know, we start to have that compassion, and that's what the ego allows us to do. It allows us to remember and to learn. You know, in order to go to school and take notes and learn and all of these things, do research. This is, you know, the ego. We need the ego. It becomes an imbalance. So man, if I do this, if I say this, they won't like me. If I do this, I'll get criticized, I'll get judged. And that's all the ego. So man, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to get judged, I'm going to get criticized, they're going to look at me, they're going to think I'm crazy. So that's the ego. The ego is keeping you from expressing yourself, and that's the imbalance that we're finding now. So then the balance is allowing your true self, which is your divine self, which is your self that, it's your true self. It's yourself that was here before your body. It's going to be here after this body, and it's connected to the divine. It's that God energy. It's that divine energy that is always enough, that is always free. I just wanted to pause right there because when you're living from that place, you're always enough. You don't have to prove anything. When you're living from that divine place, from that true self, you can use the ego on this earth to do positive things, great things. You can really enjoy earth and this life and other people when you live from that place. So again, it goes back to meditation. How do I get to that place? Meditation. And there's I talk a lot about meditation in the video I'm Aware, What Now, in that video. And then I will do another video on specifically meditation, guided meditations and different visualizations and stuff like that. Is the term ego really gets used in different ways, and it also gets thrown around a lot in New Age spiritual practices, and we don't always understand what that really means for us. Like who is my ego? What is my ego? Like I'm seeing this word and I'm seeing all this information and it looks good, but I there's a disconnect sometimes when we don't have that foundational understanding. And so I just wanted to put this video out for that purpose. And so even for those of my mystical people, mystics and spiritual practitioners, and people who meditate no problem every day, a few times a day, even for those people, this information can still be helpful because it just sort of brings you back um, to that understanding, to that seed, and it can just kind of ground you a little bit, this information. So keep meditating and enjoy.